Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Level Up Law, where we are leveling up your legal knowledge on the different areas of law that we handle here at South Carolina Legal Services. I'm Susan Ingalls, Senior Staff Attorney, and I will be the moderator of the webinar today, along with our producer, Kenneth Elliott, from our IT department here at Legal Services. We are joined today by Legal Services Attorney Rick Fox. Rick is a staff attorney in the Greenwood office of South Carolina Legal Services. Today, Rick will be sharing information about the rules of the road on auto repossession. This will be a general overview, and next week on Level Up Law, we will take an even deeper dive into the law in South Carolina on repossession. This webcast is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel later this week, along with the slides that Rick will be using today, so no need to take notes. Now remember, as always, this is not legal advice, but just general information for the public. You should always consult with an attorney for any specific legal issues that you have. At the end of the presentation today, we'll provide information on how to apply for free legal assistance at South Carolina Legal Services and how to access our information and resources. You'll be in listen-only mode today if you're an attendee, but please be sure to put questions that you have about auto repossession in the question box here on the right. And as time allows, Rick and I will provide any information that we can to answer your questions. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And here's Rick Fox with the rules of the road on auto repossession. Take it away, Rick.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Susie. For most people, the car is the second most expensive item they own, second to their home. It's a very important part of their life. It provides a means of transportation to get back and forth to work, to go to the grocery store, take kids to school and back. So when a car is repossessed, it creates tremendous difficulty. Our goal today is to give some general guidelines and advice as to what the repossession procedure is going to look like, and ways to prevent and avoid repossession. How can we protect ourselves against repossession? We're going to look at this in a time frame sense. Before you buy the car, before you go into default, when there is an imminent repossession, when they're coming to get the car, and after the repossession process. One of the best times to avoid repossession is before you actually buy the car. Look at the car prices and values. Make sure you're getting a car that has good value to the amount that you're paying for it. Plan your taxes and insurance. Expect that you're going to have to pay for the car, so budgeting is a good thing to do at this point. And probably most important is read the contract. Read it thoroughly, understand it, know what's in there. You want to know what fees are there. If you don't understand a fee, ask about it. If you don't want to pay it, tell the car dealer you don't want to pay it. Take your time, read it slowly, read it thoroughly, and understand it. Also, in the contract, there will probably be some details as to how the car would be repossessed if that became necessary. So protect yourself from repossession by understanding the car purchase before you purchase the car. Before you go into default, most of us understand when our bills start getting really tight. And when they get really tight and we're afraid we're not going to make those payments, we're not going to be able to make those high payments, this is the time frame to start getting proactive to protect ourselves in the repossession process or prevent it. Some of the things that we can do, the number one thing is talk to the lender, whoever you purchased the car from. Most lenders are going to be more open to working with you at this point. Before you go into default, they might and they'll understand that you're trying to make a way, that you're going through a difficult time, and they will work with you, are more likely to work with you at this stage than they would be later. And but it's very important that any agreements that you get made at this point, that they be put in writing. If you have set up a program, a repayment program, or a modified payment program, at this time, you should be monitoring your credit reports. Usually you can get a free copy of your credit report once a year at annualcreditreport.com. And there are also applications like Credit Karma, where you can keep an eye on your credit report on a regular basis. If it's an option, you might want to consider refinancing the car. If you wait until it's too late, if you wait until you've already missed payments, it's going to be harder to do. It's going to be harder to find a lender that's willing to modify payments or refinance your car. So it's best to do this before you go into that default stage. And it's easier to do if you have more equity in the car, if the car is worth more than you actually owe on it. If it comes down to it, you might need to sell the car, if it makes sense. If you understand that this economic hardship is going to be ongoing, it's going to be difficult for you to get caught up on your payments, it might be better to sell the car. We should understand at this point, though, that in order to sell a car, you have to have a clear title. And if you owe on the car, chances are there's a lien on it. And the only way you can sell a car when the title has a lien on it is by paying it off completely. So it might be necessary at this point, when you're selling the car, if you have less value in it than you owe, you might have to actually pay a little bit to sell the car. You have to pay the car off before you can sell it to someone else. When we're in financial hardships, we have to be especially careful of scams that come our way. And this is when the predators, the parasites are looking for us. They offer us an easy out. Just be very careful about those promises that appear too good to be true, because they usually are. Now, it is good to get assistance. It's good to talk to a credit counselor. The South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs is a great resource of how we can choose a credit counselor here in South Carolina. The Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, also has more information on that at their website, ftc.gov. Just make sure that when you select a credit counselor, that you're selecting one that is reputable and is going to assist you in your process and not take advantage of you. Our point of biggest concern is is after default, when we have already missed payments, and when we are expecting the tow truck to show up at any minute to pick up the car. This is the point of the most contention. We have protections, and there are guidelines that a repossession agent has to follow in this process. First, before the car can be repossessed, you will get a notice. After you're more than 10 days late, you'll get a notice, and the letter will give you 20 days to cure. That means you make all your payments, and it's not just making one payment. in order to cure, you have to pay everything that you are late or behind, including late fees. One thing to be aware of, though, is that this right to cure letter, this notice, they only have to send it out once. So if you go into default and they send you a letter in January, and then you get it cleared up in February, and then in November you go into default again, they don't have to send you another letter. They can just go straight to repossession. So they are required to send you a letter, but they're only required to send you one per year. When the repossession agent shows up to your house, they have to be respectful. You should keep an eye on the progress, on the process. The repossession agent must act respectfully, and they're prohibited from engaging in conduct that would be considered a breach of the peace. So if we'll get into that in the next slide. If there are personal items in the car, you will have a right to collect them after the repossession, and the car lot's not allowed to make you pay. You don't have to pay to get your personal items. They can't hold it for ransom, and you don't have to sign any kind of release. You are allowed to get your personal property. But if you know you're in danger of having your car repossessed at any time, it's probably a good idea to keep all of your personal items out of the car, so that's never an issue. Creditors can be held liable for any harmful conduct that occurs if they cause any damage in your property, or if they cause any injury, they can be held liable. And if there is any damage, make sure you keep that in writing. There are laws that protect us when the car is being taken. There are three ways that the car can be returned. One, the creditor, us, we can return that car on our own. That's a voluntary repossession. Also, the creditor has the choice of going to court and suing for possession of the car. But most of the time, what happens is what's called self-help repossession. That's what we normally think of when we say repo. And in a self-help repossession, there's some protections for us. The agent cannot commit what is called a breach of the peace. There can't be any kind of confrontation. So technically, if the repo man comes out to take the car, if you go out to the car and say, no, you cannot have my car, if they take it over your objection, that is technically a breach of the peace. But our recourses, our protections after that point are kind of limited. So my recommendation would be to tell them no, they can't take the car. But if they insist on it, then don't get yourself hurt. Don't get your property damaged. Allow that to be taken, and we can discuss it later. You can talk with an attorney later and see what kind of protections and defenses you have. Now, a car can be taken off the street. It can be taken out of a parking lot, even where you work. It can even be taken out of your driveway or a carport, or even your garage if the garage is open. But the car cannot be taken by law out of a closed garage, a locked garage. Before we get into what happens after the repossession, Susie, do we have any questions?
Yeah, Rick, we do have a couple of questions. One of them is the bank said that they would work with me, but they sent a letter saying that they're going to repossess. So and the question is, can they do that? Can they go ahead and send a letter saying they're going to repossess when they've told me on the telephone that they'll work with me? And I think, probably the answer to that is you have to be careful talking about these things on the telephone, because sometimes debt collectors, whether it be someone from the creditor, the repo man, or whoever, they're gonna say anything to accomplish what it is that they're seeking, whether it's to repossess your car, get a payment, or whatever. So if your lender says that they are working with you, then you're going to need something in writing. Just them saying on the telephone, "Oh, we'll work with you," is not going to help when the repo man comes. You can't stand out there and say, "Oh, I was just talking on the telephone with my lender and they said they'd work with me." Um, the repo agent, I guess, am I right, Rick? They really are disconnected from your lender. Like the lender is hiring them and says, "Go get this car," and that's pretty much the end of it. They're kind of operating on their own after that.
That is correct. The repo agent is usually just a tow truck driver, and they're just there to pick up a car and deliver it. And there's really not any reason to get into an argument with him.
Right. And here's the other question is, what if I tell the repo man he can't take the car, but he starts doing it anyway? Should I call the police? And I think the answer to that is, it depends on the situation, but I think typically it doesn't do a lot of good to call the police, because it's really not a criminal matter. And they are usually going to say, "Well, it looks like they have the right to repossess your car if you haven't paid." In other words, they're not going to stop the repossession if, as Rick mentioned earlier, the car is there in the public domain, in your driveway, in the street, in a parking lot, or wherever. The police are not going to keep them from taking it. And so sometimes when you call the police and they come, they sort of convince you to not resist in any way. And I think down the road that can be seen as, some kind of admission that it's okay for them to take the car. And then that makes it difficult later on, if you're involved in a lawsuit, to say that they were actually breaching the peace if you called the police and through discussions with the police allowed the repossession. That's my thought on that. Do you agree, Rick?
I do agree. I don't think it's going to be helpful to call the police, because the police definitely going to side with the repossessor. Our recourses, our protections are going to come after. At that point, it's best to consult a consumer protection attorney.
Well, that's all the questions for now.
Okay.
I do encourage our listeners to put questions down here in the question box.
After the repossession, it's not the end of the story. You still have the right to redeem your car before they sell it. After they repossess the car, the creditor's usually not interested in the car. What they want is the money, and you signed a contract to pay them a certain amount of money. So what they're after is the amount of money that they're owed, or as close as they can get to it. So what they're going to do is take the car, and then they have to sell it. They have to sell it in a commercially reasonable way. Usually that just means an auction, and it's probably going to be for much less than what you owe on it. Before that happens, you will have the right to redeem the car. You can pay off everything that you owe, and that's going to include fees, including the repossession fee, the tow bill probably. And after they sell it, then you're going to be required to pay the difference. Because you had a contract to pay a certain amount of money to the lender, and whether they have the car or not, you still owe the amount of money that you promised to pay. And so afterwards, after they sell the car and take the money, then they're going to probably sue you for the rest of the money that you owe them. You can prevent that by paying all that you owe before they sell the car. If your car has been repossessed and it's about to be sold, it'd probably be a good idea to speak with an attorney to see what are available. We also have the option of filing a complaint. If the auto lender is breaching a piece, or they're taking the car in an unreasonable manner, we have the right to file a complaint. Here in South Carolina, it's best to start with the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. But in any state, you have the option of filing a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Both of those have websites that can be found easily. I'm sorry, I should have included those website addresses in this slide. First and foremost, and I recognize that the side says if all else fails, but it doesn't have to wait until everything else fails. If you're being mistreated by the auto lender and they're doing things that they're not supposed to, seek legal assistance. Anyone that qualifies for our services, you can call our intake line and we would be glad to help. Anyone that doesn't qualify for our services can look for an attorney at consumeradvocates.org. And that is the end of my presentation. Susie?
Yeah, we do have one other question that came in. So let's go ahead and see if we can answer that. And I think this is a good question. Are the lenders required to send right to cure letters just once, or did I hear you say once a year? And I think the answer to that is under our Consumer Protection Code. If it is a car installment type contract, like a car loan is, then it is one time. If you're talking about a revolving account of some sort, or a revolving loan account, then it's once every 12 months. So there is a distinction there. You know, usually we think of that one where it's once every 12 months, but in something like a car loan, they really only have to do send that one right to cure letter. So definitely need to pay attention to that. As Rick mentioned, if you get that letter, you want to do some of these things that that Rick was mentioning. Most importantly, of course, trying to talk to your lender and work out some sort of agreement or payment plan. But again, as Rick said, you definitely want to get that in writing, because that's not going to do you any good if you're there at your house and your car is being repossessed saying that your lender said on the phone, that they would work with you, doesn't get you anywhere. You need something in writing. And even then, Rick, wouldn't you agree, even when you have something in writing, that's not always going to stop a repossession agent who has, a directive, in their hand that gives them permission from the lender to repossess your car. But then, of course, they're subjecting themselves to wrongful repossession. So it certainly behooves them to maybe contact the company that gave them that request for a repossession, because they are just as responsible for what happens during a repossession as the lender is. So I think that's all the questions that we have. Rick, was there anything further you wanted to mention?
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks so much. I want to thank you, Rick. It's a very informative overview about auto repossession and just kind of your rights in general. And thanks so much to all of you who attended today and joined us. We really do appreciate your interest in our Level Up Law programming. And we do ask that you let us know if there's any particular subject that you would like to hear about. And I do want to remind our listeners that in our Level Up Law episode next week on January 5th, the first one of 2021, we will be presenting Rules of the Road on auto repossession number 2. And that will be a little bit of a deeper dive into the actual laws that apply and some more details about what they actually say and some of the cases that we've had here in South Carolina that give you some particular ideas about what can and cannot be done when it comes to auto repossession. So let me remind everyone at this point that Level Up Law is a series that we do every Tuesday at noon. It's a live webcast where we educate the public on some of the most common legal issues that we see here at South Carolina Legal Services. Again, this episode will be uploaded to our YouTube channel later this week, and you can also find all of our previous Level Up Law episodes on quite a variety of subjects on the playlist that is called Level Up Law there on our YouTube channel. We have a number of playlists about different areas of law. The Level Up Law has a playlist of its own. So be sure and go to YouTube if you found this helpful, and check out the other episodes that we have. Now, if you do have an issue and you need legal assistance and you cannot afford a lawyer, you might be eligible for our free legal representation. The slide here that is up on the presentation provides the information about how to contact us and how to apply for our services. And the great staff at our intake office there at the 888 toll-free number is standing by 9 to 6 Monday through Thursday. But also, you can apply online, and we actually do have a Level Up Law episode that gives you some tips about how to apply online and what is being looked for in that application process. Let me just check here. To make sure we didn't have any other questions. You can like us on our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and that's another way to get notification each week of what is coming up, because we do post that. Let's see here. I think we do have another question before we go. Let's see. No, I think that's a question you've already answered, Rick. Thank you. And next week, just remember, we will be taking a deeper dive into the law that surrounds repossession in South Carolina. There are a lot of state and federal rules and regulations that have to be followed by lenders. And so next week we'll be presenting rules of the road on auto possession number 2. So be sure and tune in, register by going to any of those resources that we just mentioned, our Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And thanks for tuning in to Level Up Law today. We look forward to having you back with us next week for episode 2 of Rules of the Road on Auto Repossession. Thanks so much for joining us, and that concludes today's webinar. Thanks again, Rick, for a great presentation.
Thank you.